Checkout tracking by the NPD Group brings you a receipt collecting system that gathers data anonymously through technology we created, providing your businesses with answers.
So before I begin, I want to just get a sense of the audience, and I'll ask just all of you a few questions. You can raise your hand or shout out. Who here is a developer or working on game titles? Awesome. Who here is is mostly focused outside of the U.S. in terms of how you think about your audience and your games? Okay. Who here is on the business side of things versus on the creative side of things? Okay. Anyone? Yeah, exactly. Okay, good point. Good point. Anyone else? Any vendors out here? People who have like analytics, something to sell into this world? Okay. So I say this so that we can think about, as we think about this audience, what you guys are all thinking about. So maybe I'll spend, before we get into the topic here today is user acquisition and how to scale in this world today. But I'll give everyone a chance, and maybe start with you, Ben, just to tell us a little bit about your company, what your main titles are, and any burning issues you think about relative to user acquisition.
So my name is Ben Moscatello. I'm with Storm 8. So the company's been around since 2009. We're a mobile gaming company. We're focused on our network of games. So we've got 45 plus games right now, about 50 million monthly active users. And so we've just really got a lot of different areas going on. Kind of something for everyone. In terms of sort of burning user acquisition questions for me, basically competition's going up, costs are going up, and things like that. So it's really trying to keep all of that at a manageable level. Jeff, how about you?
Okay, good morning. I love being part of the very first session after a chart boost party. So Jeff Erle with MobilityWare. No, we don't make wheelchairs. We get asked that all the time. We make casual
Segways?
Mobile games. Pardon?
Segways?
No, that'd be fun though. We have been around actually for 25 years as a company, so we're anything but a startup, and we've been in the App Store since day one. Some of our more prolific titles are Solitaire, Free Cell, Spider, on every platform, Blackjack, and we've got a whole lot more in the pipeline that will be coming out with the end of this year and next. So user acquisition is a key topic on our minds. So looking forward to today's panel and the questions.
Awesome.
I'm Oliver Birch from Hothead Games out of Vancouver in Canada. We started in 2006. We started making digital download games for PSN XBLA, pivoted in 2011 to mobile. We have a small shooter game called Killshot, and we also do the Big Win Sports series. For me, user acquisition, I just want to buy more users, better quality, at a cheaper rate. That's really it. Simple.
Great. So maybe let's kick things off with a bit of a theoretical exercise. So at InMobi, a lot of the folks we work with have some massive resources, right? So they pay and they go. But if we had to maybe think, if you had nothing, if you're back in the garage as we were talking earlier, and you had no resources, minimal existing audience, your first few titles, how would you get started today? Again, I think the world, as you mentioned, has changed. It's going to become tougher. But so in this world, if you had nothing, what's a scrappy way you would get started? And maybe, Oliver, I'll start with you, and then we can work backwards, because it sounds like you may still be in the garage. So,
yeah, as I said to you, it has 3 floors now, though.
Garage is growing.
So, yeah, I think I would just go back to basics. I would look at ASO, so App Store Optimization. You can go to iTunes now, and you can actually look and see how many people arrive on your landing page and how many people convert. So you can measure that, and you can try to improve it. Google Play allows you to look at your listing and put different versions of your app listing out there, so you can change icons, screenshots, text, and that sort of thing. So between the two, you should be able to sort of measure success there. I think Congregate started to use that Google Play piece, and they found a 30% uplift in changing assets on the conversion side of things. So we've seen 200% increase in conversion when we've changed our store assets. So it's pretty powerful what you can do there. Obviously, it depends on your starting point, but at least there's insight into converting as many users as possible that actually land on the store pages.
Jeff, thoughts?
Yeah, so obviously we live in a social media dominated world. So if you can do anything that is especially targeted to millennials, that could be picked up by Twitter, Instagram, et cetera, you know the list, that would be a real nice way without any cash to try to get some word of mouth uplift and organic downloads through that. Outside of that, I mean, if your idea is amazing, then maybe it's go find some money, right? So go raise money through a VC or go do a rev share deal with a publisher. But I think it's way tougher today than it's ever been before. So without money, it's a real challenge.
So do you feel like money's become an absolute barrier where maybe 5 years ago you could scrap your way forward, but are you feeling like, let's say within certain categories or certain title groupings, you just need money?
I'm not sure. I think, indie developers especially, they need to get out there and talk to their peers. They can create groups. You can work with great companies like Chartboost, where you can put in their SDK. They have a platform where you can actually just drive traffic around, each other's games, things like that. So it's really about, the power of the collective. If you can do that, then you can do it without money. It's possible. But you have to get out there. You have to talk a lot about your games. And you have to make friends, basically.
Any suggestions on kinds of groups that indies could go connect to?
We have some in Vancouver. We have Vancouver Social Games, and that's a pretty powerful group, actually. People all come together and collaborate and give as many insights as possible. And we'll work with the little indies sometimes. I'm working with a guy right now to help him with his App Store optimization. Sometimes we'll send him a few installs, to see how it goes. So it's possible, I think.
I think Oliver just offered some advice and counsel.
Only if you're in Vancouver.
Hitch a ride with Oliver.
Ben, what do you see? How does the world of the garage look?
So in terms of the idea about social networking and things like that, one of the ideas that's been coming up more recently is the idea of influencers. So either someone on YouTube that maybe has a reach of 1, 2, 3 million people. So you could potentially work with someone like that for free, some type of favor or something like that. There are companies now that actually focus on paid opportunities with these influencers, but there's potential to do some type of deal to work with them for free as well.
And Ben, do you know off the top of your head any examples of those companies that are doing influencer networks that you can tap into for a couple bucks? $20.
So, so I've been talking with 2 different companies recently. I forget their names off the top of my head, though.
Okay. So I think Ben just invited you to email him and find out. So, Jeff, maybe just to deep dive a little bit on what you said, I think social is a big open-ended thing. Like, if you could only get something to go viral on social. Do you have any examples, and maybe I'll just throw it open to the whole group, like who's done an interesting job of leveraging social, either around the concept or around just execution? I don't know if you have any examples yourself, or if you look across the industry, across the aisle and say, God, they just do a good job with that. Any thoughts?
I can't think of anyone off the top of my head. And we actually do a pretty mediocre job. We see it as some low-hanging fruit and something we can do a lot better. So we're looking at it very closely now, but I can't give you any really good stories. But somebody?
The new Angry Birds 2 game actually has a pretty interesting social element. You get a gift that you don't know what it is, but you can give it to somebody, but you have to sign into Facebook first to be able to give it to somebody. So there's intrigue there. And the
mystery.
Yeah, and exactly, and you're able to then pass that on to your friends. So I think that's interesting. But that's a pretty deep integration. There's more simple stuff you can do. We've put in the ability to invite friends via SMS or email or even WhatsApp. And for some reason, WhatsApp is very successful on Google Play products compared to iOS. But that's just a pretty simple integration. As long as you get enough visibility on that, then people, if they love the game, then they'll message their friends and let them know.
Just make the path easy for them.
Absolutely.
Got it. So Jeff, maybe a moment on the therapist couch. So you said so you feel like you do some you do social, but you do it maybe not as well as you hoped. If you can give us maybe 2 self-critiques of what things you could be doing better that might be lessons for the audience as well on the social front?
So overall, or just as it relates to
Like maybe
social?
within the social context. I'm putting you on the hot seat, Jeff.
Sure, yeah, no worries. So, we have a pretty decent sized community of players, and we don't do enough focus on building and nurturing that community. So we've got literally millions of users, and we just don't do a good job of it, quite frankly, right? And we have huge, I think, upside opportunity. Part of the challenge is if it's solitaire, by the name of the game, it's solitaire, you play it by yourself. So it's not an overly social game. It's actually an antisocial game. So that's our big challenge. But yeah, we're looking at it, and we think there's, again, a lot of upside potential for us to do something much more focused on building that community of users who want to interact with each other.
So maybe what Ben was saying is like inside your user base, you might have some of those influencers that if you could nurture them, they could rise up and do things for you. No
doubt. And actually, some of them contact us all the time, which, I want to be a blogger for you, or I want to I want to write a book. We had this guy in the UK said, I want to write a book on tips about how to play solitaire, and you can advertise it for me. I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah, we get all kinds of people that come out of the woodwork with great ideas about community.
I think that's a good point. I think customer service is actually a key component of success, and being able to engage in your audience, and it's the developer dream. We actually have that ability now, so you should take advantage of it. We have 24/7 round the clock customer service, so that's important if somebody's having an issue or whatever, and you need to give them some currency or something to make them feel better. If they go and tell their friends about that, that's very positive.
Awesome. So maybe let's switch gears and go to the other extreme. So let's say you had $1 million. Evil laugh. Insert exactly. Ben, we'll start with you. So let's just say you have the resource. You've convinced the VC, your rich uncle, whoever it may be. How would you execute today? Because, like, again, from an InMobi standpoint, right? We love people who spend money because that's what we do for a living. But also, I think we find that customers who spend money wisely tend to be around for a long time and be sustained. So, curious. It's easy to spend $1 million these days. And how would you do it? And what are the pitfalls you'd avoid if you're spending to acquire?
Sure. So I think the critical factor is targeting. You have to be targeting the right users. So again, it's easy to spend $1 million. If you're spending it on getting the wrong players into your game, then it's pretty much wasted. So you really have to get your targeting down. So both in terms of demographics, but also just interests in general.
So, talk to us about that relative to your games, because I think you guys have a pretty wide portfolio. How do you think, what is give us a couple of dimensions of what is a good user or a valuable user or right user, whatever the case may be. Are you calibrating towards how much they spend, engagement, lifetime value? How do you think about those things?
So all those things, really. So one of the most important parts of paid user acquisition is you want to get more value than you're spending on the user. So lifetime value, definitely a critical item. For Stormate specifically, we've got this huge network of games, lots of crossover. Some of the games are similar. Some of the interests are much different. And so we can get people into this network and then keep them interested, keep them engaged by changing to each of the different games.
Got it. Thank you. Jeff, what about $1 million? Suitcase, unmarked bills.
Wow. So the retargeting, I thought, was actually the best answer. First and foremost, I wouldn't do it all with any one ad network. Sorry.
I can live with that. And
I think a lot of people do that, and it's quite a mistake because there is no silver bullet, right? As good as many of them are, there's such a dependency around what you're targeting, what platform you're looking at, whether it's international, US, et cetera, et cetera. So I think I'd probably pick 10 and do 100K each. Did that add up to $1 million? Yeah. Instead of just give it all to one specific ad network. And the other thing I would do with each of those is test, and I would test, and I would test again and test again, because again, none of the ad networks, in my opinion, get it right the first time, and it's just the nature of the beast, whether it is figuring out the retargeting or the targeting itself. It's just a real challenge, and you've got to test and hold them accountable and test more. So I guess it's a portfolio and approach is what I'm suggesting, because you just can't give it all to one player, because they'll burn through it, and I don't think you'll see the value.
So maybe digging in on that point a little bit, without naming names.
Don't make me.
Oh yes. No, without naming names. Do you have is there an epic failure? Like, okay, we did this and it just failed, bombed, and maybe there's a diagnosis of why. Do you remember any or epic victories? Like, this was awesome. No names named. How about that? Just in case you name someone I know.
I will say, just generally, the group that I feel is most challenging to equate the talk track with the results would be all of the, I can get you all kinds of Facebook users for 30% less than that other guy.
Got it.
I would run for the hills when you hear that story.
Cheap Facebook users, it's a beachside property in Arizona. Yeah, okay, got it.
I think the biggest mistake is, it's really saying what these guys are saying, but it's about profitability. I mean, you can buy users very easily. Buying users well is really key. So targeting, definitely. You want to think about which countries you want to go after, which countries are going to give you that profitability. Even device level is important. So if somebody has a 6+, they're going to have more disposable income than somebody that's still hanging on to their 5. So those are important factors. And I think, trust with the networks is an ongoing dialogue, let's say. And those guys will just spend your money, no problem. And I think, to be slightly controversial, there are partnerships that need to be made. They need to understand that it isn't just about spending your money, because if you're not profitable, then you can't spend any more money. And I think that's really the key to the way that this business should be run.
So that's a great point. So maybe for Oliver, if you have some thoughts on this, if you're, again, an established organization and you have a lot of analytics firepower, you can get at LTVs and be able to be really smart about your spend. If you're smaller, indie, scrappier, in the garage, one floor, any suggestions on what some of the smaller folks here can do to get a handle on those economic, that profitability equation? Because I think the other thing I've seen is sometimes you think you're profitable, but you're not. you forgot to carry the one.
You have to be patient. I think that's the key. So if you've got $1 million, don't spend it in a month. Spend it.
Same thing, yeah.
Yeah, like take one step at a time. Understand what you're doing. Really look at the return, and the return may take time to understand as well. So some of these LTVs, it can be 90 days, can be even longer than that. So you've got to try to understand what is the user's sort of propensity to pay, how long is that going to take them. So just take your time with it. Don't go all guns blazing. Take one territory, take one platform, and then understand it very well.
Yeah, if I can add just a key element to that too, I agree with all that, is trying to figure out which ones are your quality users and what source did they come from. And that does take a certain amount of analytics tools, but it could be Flurry, which is free, right? Or one of the attribution partners, or both. And if you're tracking the right events and you can take it all the way back to the source, then you can continue to use that source. It goes back to the testing, right? Which is, where are my best quality users coming from, and which of the ad network providers are bringing them to me, and that's who I want to spend more of my money with. So yeah, getting the LTV and spending profitably is key, but I agree, defining down to where are those groups coming from, and just spend more there, because different ad networks will get you different types of users across the board, and it's kind of all over the place. And if you're not measuring it, they're not going to for you.
So actually, something listening to both of you speak, one thing I think I just picked up is sometimes I know when I was on the other side of this as a publisher and trying to buy audience, you look at just the price point. It's cheap, it's expensive. And what I think I'm getting out of this conversation is actually it's the whole equation that matters. So it may be expensive, but if you're getting the right source and the right downstream events, that's a good thing. And maybe, in fact, the cheap is something, as you were saying, is run to the hills if it's too good to be true to begin with. So Oliver, you mentioned started in geography. Just a side question, our team was talking about this. I guess last week it was, it looks like at least a fair number of new titles get launched in markets like Australia first. Is that a symptom of what you just described, or is Australia kind of just an awesome place so people want to launch there first, or what's the story?
Yeah, I think you have your information wrong there. We always launch in Canada first.
Oh, of course.
It depends. I mean, there's lots of strategies out there. Zynga currently has Dawn of Titans out in 7 different countries. I'm not going to remember them all, but you know, Saudi Arabia, Vietnam, I think there's Indonesia, and it depends what you're looking for. I spoke to a very large publisher the other day who has never done soft launch before, so they're sort of building that process, and I think they started with New Zealand, and they found that there wasn't enough traffic there for them to understand, you know, certain modes and within the game, whether people would play them and, you know, how they would play them and that sort of thing. So some people are just looking for bugs. Does the game work? Does that feature actually, you know, operate as it should? And then other people are testing. So if you're, you know, testing variants within the game, then you need a certain amount of traffic to make that statistically significant. So that's always a challenge. You're always looking for a certain amount of DAU, and you're probably just looking for new users constantly for all the different changes that you've made. So there's different strategies for soft launch. I advise everybody to go to Australia and buy their users there.
Great. Jeff, any thoughts on soft launch approach? I think it's, I mean, you're advocating kind of a sampling strategy, Oliver, I think, which is like think about what you want to achieve, what signals you want to get back, and build your soft launch around that. Jeff, I don't know if it's something you guys do as well.
Yes, we do. And Australia's become more popular because Canada's gotten expensive, right? So years ago, it was always Canada. English speaking, not US, same time zone, so your customer service efforts are easier. You can fine tune and optimize and buy users much more cheaply. That has gotten tougher. So you guys up there are really killing it, I guess. So now Australia has become a better platform. Actually, we just did a soft launch in the Netherlands and the Philippines, so which is even cheaper still if you can get enough volume. And actually, we're seeing that we can, which is cheaper than Australia, cheaper than Canada, and allows us to, you know, take the 3 months time frame to fine tune, optimize, and have a very successful launch when we do so worldwide, which is mostly here and, you know, the big 7, right? So.
Got it. So I think we just got the wave on time, but I wanted to ask one last question. We can maybe skim through this very quickly. So we've been talking about a little bit region agnostic. So in other words, just generally speaking, how do you build users? How do you get scale? What are the pitfalls? Any thoughts on regional differences? So let's say you're launching in China, India, some of the big markets. Are there some fundamentally different channels and different dynamics that you've seen in a given market? And maybe if you can shout out one of those, that might just be helpful for the team, for the audience to think about the complexities of the world. So maybe Ben, I'll start with you on that.
So I'm just going to get the first one out of the way. So language, like that's the one everyone always just goes for that. But that's actually just really skimming the surface. So the one that I would call out would be visuals. If you look at games in the West, games in the East, the visuals that appeal to people are completely different. And so that's, I think, one of the key factors to focus on.
Got it. That's great.
I'd say find an ad network that specializes in the particular countries you want to go to, because not all of them do. Most ad networks actually like to target, you know, the top 7 or 10 or whatever their focus is, and 11 through 175 get left out, right? But there are people that do go to those countries, can get you the right rates, will understand the localization challenge and culture and language barriers, and help you through it. So I think it's really picking the right partner.
Got it. Oliver?
We took Killshot to the top 10 in Japan on both Android and on iTunes, and it took probably 2 months of researching the ad networks, trying to understand who is who. Let's say there's 10 companies there. They're probably all owned by the same company. They're just different names. So really trying to understand who is key. Japan is interesting in that it's about 80% incentivized users in terms of bursting up the charts. The value of those users is incredibly high, Japanese users is incredibly high, so non-incent prices are ridiculous, and it's very hard to compete. Some of those networks don't even want to do any attribution tracking, and they want you to trust them with that, we found up to levels of up to 50% fraud from those particular networks.
You're painting such a great picture. Can't wait to run to Japan.
It's difficult. It's challenging. You know, in China, for example, I mean, it's a different thing altogether, and I haven't done any buying there. But they're kind of in the 2011 time frame. You know, they're taking games paid and then dropping them to free to try and get a boost in the free charts like we used to do in 2011. So, you know, different markets are at different stages of maturity, I would say.
Got it. Thank you, Oliver. So I think this is now time, and it seems we're out of time for questions, but what we can do is I'll make sure no one runs away. We will stand outside, and we'll be happy to answer any questions and get any more wisdom out of the panel here. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And thank you for coming.